Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Sailesh Rao. I'm an advisor to VeganNation, and I'm also the executive director of Climate Healers. And our mission is to heal the earth from the inside out. So I'm going to talk to you about climate change and veganism for the next 40 minutes or so. And then I'll unmute all of you so you can ask questions. So to begin with, I want to tell you about this remarkable man that I learned about just a few days ago. So his name is Paul Chatlin. And he has a very remarkable story to tell, and it's on his web page as well. So you can see, later you can go back and see what I'm talking about. Now, his story is very relevant to what we are discussing here about climate change. So I'll show you his story first. So he was diagnosed with a heart disease in May of 2013. So he had an enlarged heart, he had leaky valves, he had 100% blocked artery, excruciating chest pain, branch block and heart murmur. He had 65% blocked arteries. He couldn't walk even 10 steps without feeling the pain. And they diagnosed that he had a thickening of the right side of the heart as well. So after doing all this analysis on Paul Chatlin, the doctors gave him, basically 3 options. So his cardiologist happened to be a man who was a disciple of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. So he gave him 3 options. Normally, people only get 2 options. First option is take no action and you die, right? And the second option that he gave him was a triple bypass surgery. But since this cardiologist was a disciple of Caldwell Esselstyn, he gave him the third option, which is go on a plant-based diet and you can solve your problem. So Paul decided to take the third option. And to do that, he didn't know how to eat a plant-based diet. So he took a course with the Esselstyn, and it cost him $975. And he got better and better. So then he decided, I want to get reimbursed by the insurance company for the money I paid for the cooking class. So he tried to get the money back from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that began his journey. He realized that there is no way that Blue Cross Blue Shield will ever reimburse him for the cooking classes, because the system is not set up for that. The system is set up to just do bypass surgery. That was the only thing that they could consider. So 14 of the 15 leading causes of death in Western countries can be mitigated or even reversed with a whole food plant-based diet. And yet, this is not a valid option as far as insurance companies are concerned. They'd rather pay $125,000 for a bypass surgery than $1,000 for a cooking class. So you wonder, what is going on? So the first misdirection that happened to him was that he could not get coverage, insurance coverage for diet change. This is because the system is set up in a way that basically they are factory farming us for profit. So we pour all these toxins into the environment, and so we did a movie called The Human Experiment, which talked about that. And we are pouring like 250 billion tons of toxins every year into the environment. And those toxins then work their way up the food chain. So in Cowspiracy, we showed that people don't want to talk about animal foods and how animal foods are the cause of all of our diseases, all of our problems on Earth. No one seems to want to talk about that, because these animal foods concentrate these toxins by a factor of 10 to 100 in the food. So once these toxins are concentrated and you start eating them, you get sick. So when you get sick, then the pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment comes along and fixes you, so to speak, with bypass surgeries and pills. So in every step of the process, people are making money off of this. And the last thing they want you to do is to get healthy by yourself and get out of the system, essentially escape from the factory farm. But that's what Paul did. He escaped from the factory farm. And then he started this plant-based nutrition support group to help others escape from the factory farm. And then you find out that there is all this misdirection that's done. It's not just that the system is set up just to have us go through this process of getting sick and then getting pharmaceuticals and surgical procedures, but also they teach us lies. They teach us that meat is the only source of protein. And they teach it to us when we are very young. Or animal foods are the only source of protein. The third, milk is the only source of calcium. So you buy into this and you get scared that you don't want to change your diet. If you change your diet, you may just have protein deficiency or calcium deficiency and die. So this is what we escaped as vegans. We discovered that these were all lies. These were all misdirections that they were doing, and the system was set up to funnel us through this factory farm system, right, for profit. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story about Paul is because this is exactly what's going on in the environment. So Paul today, of course, he took this plant-based nutrition track, and then he is now the executive director of plant-based nutrition support group. And here he is with Dr. Joel Kahn and posing with the cabbage, the red cabbage. And he is very healthy and he is very happy. So now I want to tell you the remarkable story of humanity and the environment, and it has close parallels with Paul's story. You look at the state of the environment today, it is just like the state of Paul's health from 2013. We have climate change happening, we have biodiversity losses, excess land conversion. So anything red in this diagram is bad. Okay? There's nitrogen and phosphorus loading. All of these are problems. So the earth is saying you're going beyond the limits of what you can do on earth. And simultaneously, there are all these social issues that we haven't addressed. There are people without enough water, the people without enough political voice or income or education or health. So there are 16 different red blocks in this diagram, which is causing tremendous impact on the planet. So how do you deal with this? You have climate change, and we hear a lot about climate change, but we don't hear about the other major issues like biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss is actually one of the worst things that's happening right now, because climate change causes animals to die. Our land conversion causes animals to die. Our nitrogen and phosphorus loading causes animals to die. So animals are dying much, much faster than normal. So we are losing them very fast. Okay? But what are we being told? So we're being told that there are really three options for us, actually. Jeremy Lent wrote a book called The Patterning Instinct, where he said there are three possible options for humanity. The first is chaos and extinction. This is the death option that Paul had, right? So do nothing and die. The second is the bypass surgery option, so which is geoengineering and a techno-split. The techno-split means an extreme inequality between the haves and the have-nots. So few people have everything and the rest have next to nothing. So it's like the Hunger Games scenario. And obviously, this is not sustainable. So I really believe the Hunger Games scenario will lead to a Mad Max scenario. So essentially, the techno split will become chaos and extinction. Just like if Paul had taken the bypass surgery option, he would have eventually died too. So the third option is the great transition to a vegan world. So this is the vegan option that I'm going to be talking about. So this is stepping outside the system though, and that's the problem. See, veganism fundamentally solves all of those issues that I showed you. 16 of the 16 leading causes of environmental death can be mitigated and reversed if the world adopts a compassionate vegan ethic. That is not just the diet, but it goes beyond the diet. The vegan ethic, when I say compassionate vegan ethic, I'm talking about compassion for animals in everything that we do. But our political leaders are not talking about it. They're not doing anything about it. The system is not set up for that. So they're basically letting things ride. So they're shooting for the bypass surgery option, the geoengineering and techno split, the extreme inequality between the haves and the have-nots. And the system has been designed in such a way that meat and dairy are corporations that are too big to fail. So here is how much meat and dairy that is being bought by the US government. And you can see that in relation to the Capitol building over there. So how big that is. It's being bought by the US government and dumped eventually. So it's stored right now and it will be dumped eventually. So just to keep the industry afloat. So it doesn't matter if the whole world goes vegan. They're going to keep buying this and keeping it there because they don't know how else to do this. The system is not set up for this. Just like Blue Cross Blue Shield did not know how to reimburse a plant-based diet. And who is doing all this? If you look at it, you will notice that all the big corporations, all the big media, big pharma, big meat, big chem, big banks, big oil, big defense, they all have these 4 financial holding companies as some of the major stockholders. There's literally a few people who are running the whole system. And it is being done through lies. Just like they do with promoting meat and dairy. They're telling us that that's the only source of protein or the only source of calcium. They're doing something very similar here. The misdirection that they do, sorry. The first misdirection that they do is focus on just climate change. Among all of the environmental problems that I showed you, they only focus on climate change. And even that, not so much, okay? But at least they talk about that, but not the other, not biodiversity loss, not ecosystems collapse. And within climate change, the climate change is caused by radiative forcing, the forcing of greenhouse gases on the Earth. The greenhouse gases are heating up the Earth. So everything that's red here is heating up the Earth, and everything that's blue here is cooling the Earth. Those are aerosols. And these are all the components of the greenhouse gas emissions that we are doing as humanity. And if you look at it, you'll see that CO2, carbon dioxide, is about 1.6 watts per square meter. That's how much forcing, greenhouse gas forcing, carbon dioxide is causing on Earth today. But there are all these other gases. There's methane, there's nitrous oxide, there are halocarbons, tropospheric ozone. These are also greenhouse gases. And if you add up all their contributions, they actually are just as big as CO2. But on the blue side, you see all these aerosols, direct effect aerosols, cloud albedo effect aerosols. These are basically aerosols like sulfur dioxide that go up in the air and they cool the earth. So these aerosols contribution is also equal in magnitude to the contribution of CO2 and the contribution of the other greenhouse gases. So it's essentially you have three components. There's one component that's CO2, there's one component that's all other greenhouse gases that are causing heat warming, and then all the aerosols that are causing cooling. And they all are roughly the same magnitude. But if you look closely at the physics of this, you will notice that when you burn fossil fuels, that's when you create these aerosols. Sulfur dioxide is a byproduct of burning coal. So fossil fuels are the main source of CO2. Let's assume that that's true, right? The fossil fuels are the main source of CO2. So then CO2 and aerosols have to be coupled together. Because obviously when you burn coal, if you're causing aerosols, then if you burn less coal, you'll be burning less, you'll be creating less aerosols. So literally CO2 and aerosols are coupled together, they go together. But that's not how they tell the story. They tell the story that the other greenhouse gases cancel the aerosols and therefore CO2 is the only problem. This is a misdirection. This is a misdirection. This is similar to telling us that meat is the only source of protein. Now, even within this, if you look at the carbon emissions, the carbon cycle of the planet, we are causing a lot of disturbance to the natural cycle as humanity. So everything in red here is a change that we caused as humanity. And if you look at the magnitude of fossil fuels and land use change, they're like 7.8 billion tons per year and 1.1 billion tons per year. If you look at the total amount of carbon that we have added to the atmosphere since 1750, it's about 240 billion tons. And the total amount of carbon that we have added, that is in the atmosphere is about 830 billion tons. But if you look at the total amount of carbon that's on land, that's about 2,000 to 3,000 billion tons. So it's 3 to 4 times as much carbon as in the atmosphere. So in the atmosphere, we have added 240 billion tons over what was there. And that is what's causing all this global warming. And it's caused by us burning fossil fuels, yes. But if you look at the next one here, total respiration and fire, that's 11.6 billion tons. So that's the extra that we have added from the biomass that we have created on Earth. So that's actually greater than the fossil fuel contribution. The third misdirection they do is to focus on fossil fuels only, so that you don't look at what the contribution from animal agriculture and from land. If you look at the total amount of carbon that's on land, and you know that the total is 3 to 4 times what's in the atmosphere, and you'll see that the density of carbon is exactly where the forests are. So where the Amazon is, you get a high density of carbon. Where the Congo is, there's a high density of carbon. And wherever we have deforested, you see a low density of carbon. So you ask yourself the question: if you could bring back the forests where they have been cut, how much extra carbon can be sequestered? Can we not undo the damage that we've done in the atmosphere? Can we not pull it back? And sure enough, if you look at the density of animal agriculture and where it is being done, you will see it's being done where the carbon is now low. So where there are holes is where the forests are. So clearly there is a relationship between growing animals and reducing the carbon on land. And look at India. It's so full of cows, how dense it is. So this is the global bovine density, the density of cows on the planet. So just like in the health literature, the data was there, but it's just how it's being told to us, how they're presenting it to us that misdirects us and puts us in this factory farm situation. Here also, the data is there in the IPCC documents. The IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they've been putting all these documents out. The scientists are doing their job. They're telling us what is really going on. But then the government people come along, okay, because it is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And the government people come along and then they twist it to tell the message in such a way that we don't change. If you look at what is really happening on land, you will notice that the amount of cropland we use is only about 10% of the total land area of the planet. So the total land area of the planet is 130 million square kilometers, and cropland is just 13 million square kilometers. But from that, we get 6.36 gigatons of food every year. Of that 6.36 gigatons, half of it goes to feed the animals. The animal production system is taking 3.14. So 1.52 gigatons goes into this processing, the industrial food processing block. And then from the animals, so the animals are taking 3.14 gigatons plus 3.87 gigatons from the grazing lands alone. So the grazing land together is about 46 million square kilometers, and that's about 35% of the land area of the planet. So all the data is here. You can see, all these forestry that they're talking about is basically timber. This is timber for paper products and things like that. So this is really not, these are all monoculture forests that they're talking about here. And then the unused forests are where the wild animals are living. So they're living on less than 10% of the land area of the planet. Okay? So whenever they come into our areas, we kill them. So they are dying. So the animal production system together is taking up, so if you look at the total amount of food that we are eating as human beings, it's about 1.54 gigatons per year. Of that, 0.26 gigatons is coming straight from plants, and 1.28 gigatons is coming from the processing block, the industrial processing block. But the animals are eating 7.27 gigatons of food. And after eating 7.27 gigatons of food, they're providing us with 0.26 gigatons of animal foods like meat and dairy and eggs. And that goes into this block, this food industrial processing block, where they take 1.78 gigatons and throw away 0.5 gigatons because of the processing. So that's the waste. So only 1.28 gigatons goes out. So by the time the animal food comes to our plate, it's only about 0.18 gigatons. So 0.18 gigatons is what we are eating, and we are feeding them 7.27 gigatons. So that's a 40 to 1 reduction that happens. So the data is here. It shows you what is really going on. If you look at the biomass distribution over the years, 10,000 years ago, wild animals were about 200 million tons, and human beings were a tiny little blip on top of that. By 1970, the wild animals were down by 60%, and humans were 200 million tons. So we were the same weight as all the wild animals from 10,000 years ago put together. And our farmed animals were about double our weight, and they were eating an extra. So basically, the farmed animals are all very young animals, so they eat much more than their weight alone would indicate. So this was the situation in 1970, and people got very worried about this. So there was all this population bomb book came out by Paul Ehrlich, and the Prime Minister of India actually tried to get everybody to get vasectomies so that we don't have people anymore. But then all that stopped, and we continued with the current system of growth. And then in 40 years, between 1970 and 2010, 52% of wild animals died out. Our population doubled, okay? And our farmed animals are basically eating almost 5 times as much food as we do. So they are presenting a biomass that's much bigger than us, about a factor of 5. So the wild animals are dying off very rapidly now. So at the rate at which they're dying off, I believe that by 2026, they'll be almost all gone. That's how fast they're dying. And if we continue with the current system, so this will be our population, and this will be all the farmed animals that we are feeding. This is the year zero scenario. So George Monbiot said extinction is the bycatch of consumerism. And if we do that, we are going to be dying as well eventually. So this is the extinction scenario. So the other thing that we can do is to go vegan. So by 2026, if we can get the whole world to go vegan, then we will have all the resources that we are currently feeding the animals. We will have all those resources to undo the damage we did on Earth. And eventually, once we have a system of normalized nonviolence and equality among people, our population will automatically decline, and the wild animals can come back, and all the domestic animals that we have in sanctuaries will eventually go back into the wild. So that's the scenario I imagine. That is a sustainable scenario. This is the plant-based diet option, the vegan option that Paul took. And if we did that, you can take that land that we're currently using for feeding, for grazing the animals, and return that to forests. And we checked that on that land, if we just return the original forest that used to be there in 1800, that alone will sequester 265 gigatons of carbon on land, which is more than the 240 gigatons of carbon that we've added to the atmosphere since 1750. And it will only use up 41% of that land to get that much sequestration to happen. So we can literally reverse climate change. And it can happen pretty fast. So here is an example of land that was protected from grazing in 2002, and by 2006 it became that. Okay, so in 4 years, literally the forest was coming back. And here is an example of, again, a similar thing. A coffee plantation was given back to the animals, and within 15 years, it became a forest. This is Sai Sanctuary, also in India. So if you take all this into account, and Goodland and Anand did that, if we take into account the avoided carbon sequestration on land and the breathing contribution of the animals, all these extra animals that we have put on Earth that weren't there before, the total greenhouse gas contributions of animal agriculture is actually bigger than everything else. It's 51% is a lower bound that Goodland and Anand came up with. So it is the #1 reason for climate change as well. But the misdirection that we are doing in order to keep the system going, I mean, we appealed to Mr. Gore to stop that. But he didn't listen to us. This was done in 2012. But there is no way for them to stop this from happening. You see, every great transition in human history has happened when we changed 3 things. When we changed how we communicated, when we changed how we used energy, and we changed how we ate. The discovery of fire, for communications, it was speech. For energy, it was fire, controlled use of fire. And for food, it was cooking. In the agricultural revolution, it was writing. There was the communications revolution that happened. And for energy, it was using domestic animals. And for food, it was growing our own crops. And then in the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago, it was the printing press for communications. Energy, it was fossil fuels. And for food, it was factory farming. And today, we are in the cusp of this major revolution, a great transition. For energy, it is, for communications, it is now the internet and cryptography and holography. And for energy, it is solar and renewable energy. And for food, it's veganism. So it's unstoppable. This revolution is unstoppable. So it's like the caterpillar turning to the butterfly. It's a major transition like this that's happening now.
Is humanity nothing more than a cancer on the planet, consuming its host until it is gone, guaranteeing its own destruction in the process? A quick glance at the effects of our behavior might lead us to say yes. But looks can be deceiving. Nature shows us that what is destructive on one level can also be part of a larger process of change that creates new forms of value at another level. Consider the Indian elephant. At first glance, the elephant appears to be destructive as she tramples through the forest, breaking limbs from trees, eating all the jackfruit, and littering the landscape with huge piles of poop. But when we look closer, we see that the trampling provides pathways for the other animals in the forest. The breaking of tree branches allows the sun's rays to reach the forest floor, enabling plants to grow in the understory. And elephant poop contains jackfruit seeds buried in fertile manure, which propagates the jackfruit tree. Like the elephant, could it be that some of humanity's destructive behavior actually have some positive unintended consequences? As we look back at Earth's story, we learn that its climate has been vastly different throughout its history. When dinosaurs roamed the land, Earth was void of ice. The sea level was hundreds of meters higher and the temperature 10 degrees warmer than it is today. Modern science has learned that there is a direct relationship between the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and the Earth's temperature. Greenhouse gases are like a blanket around the Earth, absorbing just the right amount of heat from the sun to make life possible. The higher the concentration, the warmer the temperature. In Earth's more recent history, it has endured a series of long ice ages. During each ice age, life struggles to survive. Imagine a 1-mile-thick sheet of ice on top of Chicago. All the forests die. Most of the life in the forest die, as very little can survive in these extreme conditions. Every 100 millennia, a slight change in the Earth's tilt allows the planet to absorb just enough additional heat to thaw some of the ice. Life expands for a few thousand years during this interglacial period, before retreating again as the Earth tilts back and falls into another ice age. Enter human beings. From the Earth's perspective, humans are new to the scene. We've been here for a blink of an eye, but we've been busy. As the Earth entered its most recent interglacial period, humans began using the Earth to fuel their nascent civilizations. It is calculated that more greenhouse gases were released into the atmosphere through deforestation than all the gases emitted from the burning of fossil fuels. Humans, unknowingly to them, warmed the Earth, delaying the onset of the next ice age. It turns out that there's a safe zone when it comes to greenhouse gas concentrations that keeps Earth at just the right temperature for life as we know it to thrive. Any less and we freeze, any more and we fry. In the last few decades, we've blown past this safe zone way too fast for life today to adjust, as we continue to destroy the forests for animal agriculture and find destructive new ways of extracting fossil fuels, adding ever more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. While our actions have had devastating impacts to many species on the planet, they've also enabled humans to develop the technology necessary to monitor Earth's composition. Like the part of the brain that helps stabilize and regulate our body's temperature, humans now have the ability to help Earth regulate its temperature. We've already been doing it unconsciously for thousands of years. Perhaps it's time we become conscious of our role on the planet as the Thermostat species. When we choose to stop eating animals, the land used for raising those animals can be restored to forests. And those forests can sequester all of the greenhouse gases we've emitted during the fossil fuel age, bringing us back within the safe zone where life as we know it can thrive. This requires that humanity undergo a metamorphosis from an egocentric consumer culture to an ecocentric, life-enriching culture. Again, nature shows us how this is done. A caterpillar spends his entire life, from the moment he's born, eating. He eats the nutritious shell he was born out of. Then he eats the leaf the egg was clinging to. The caterpillar continues eating all the leaves he encounters. Once fully satiated, the caterpillar attaches to the underside of a twig and begins growing a cocoon. New imaginal cells are born. At first, the imaginal cells are attacked by the caterpillar's immune system. But soon, they multiply and the immune system gives up. What was once a caterpillar is now a messy glob of imaginal goo. Soon, out of the cocoon emerges a beautiful butterfly. The butterfly is a very light consumer. As she sips the nectar, she pollinates the flowers, helping to regenerate life, nurturing life instead of destroying it. The time has come for humanity to undergo its metamorphosis. Our imaginal cells are awakening. We have a unique opportunity in this pivotal time in history to realize our full potential by considering ourselves stewards of life, applying the lessons we've learned to nurture the conditions for life to thrive for all of Earth's remaining years.
And the scientific data for that theory is there, So we know that if we look at the CO2 in signature in the atmosphere and methane, the human effect can be clearly seen around 6,000 years ago. And basically, we prevented the Earth from going back to another ice age. So there's a book by William Radiman that came out in 2014, and I've taken this graphic from that book. And here he shows the early agriculture was responsible for keeping the temperature of the Earth above the glaciation threshold. We would have gone back to ice age 6,000 years ago if we hadn't done that. And so that has increased the temperature by A, the temperature of the Earth by A, which is actually greater than B. That is how much we have increased through the after industrialization. So the burning of fossil fuels has created less of a temperature increase than our deforestation during early agriculture. Now, in his book, he assumes that we will keep doing what we are doing and essentially go into this techno-split world. So he shows that future activities, we're going to burn all the fossil fuels and then we're all going to die. But that's not what I have in mind. I'm thinking that we would become the thermostat species. So the future would be the green line. So we'll take over, we'll get to a vegan world, and then become the thermostat species that keeps the temperature constant that the Earth has set it to be, above the glaciation threshold. So we have some, demands. We wrote a declaration about this. We asked governments to stop subsidizing animal agriculture and start promoting organic plant agriculture. And we asked the media to report the truth about animal agriculture's devastating impact on human health, the environment, and our fellow creatures. We're not expecting them to listen to us, but we have to put the demands out before we do our work. And we are pleading with environmental conservation, health and animal welfare, and religious organizations to adopt a public vegan policy. And we are pleading with consumers to stop buying animal products. So you can find more information at preventyourzero.org and veganworld2026.org. We started a standards process for the system change to a vegan world. And the first conference happened in Mesa, Arizona in October. The next conference is going to happen in Israel in February 27th to 28th, hosted by VeganNation and Climate Healers. And this is a process for addressing all of the questions we have on what does the system of normalized nonviolence look like? And then how do we get there? So from 7 days of rest, which is what I was going through over the last 7 days, I'm now looking forward to 7 years of work. The 7 days of rest happened from 1st to 7th January of 2019. And through VeganNation, we are going to get to a vegan world by 2026, which is 7 years from now. And we should have fun doing this. Okay, thank you all. You're all unmuted for questions.
Oh, I've never used this before. I can speak and everybody can hear me right now?
Yes, yes.
Hi, it's Raquel. Hi, Dr. Sailesh.
Hi, Raquel. How are you?
Good. Are you going to bring your granddaughter to Israel?
I wasn't planning on it. She'll be in school.
Oh, no, because I would love if I brought my son that they could at least be together and play and stuff, right? So that would be really nice. That was an amazing video. Is there anywhere that we can click on to share it? Like, would it be through Facebook, or could you send it to us?
Yeah, I can send it to you. I'll send you a link.
Okay, perfect. Because I really like the explanation of it. So,
okay.
Yeah, I've been having Green Party movie get-togethers with my local Green Party here because I'm running for candidate in my area, and I want to use, that would be an awesome video to use to show the rest of them.
Sure, I'll email it to you.
Yeah, perfect.
Any other questions? You can.
Sailesh, I have a question. This is Yael. So we saw, I actually, it's very interesting. I learned a lot from this presentation, and especially your theory about how livestock animals, when they go back into the ecosystem, they will help increase the wildlife. And that's like one of the most prominent arguments against veganism right now, how we, what are we going to do with all the livestock animals when we release them? So I want to hear a little more explanation exactly, how would that work in the ecosystem so that next time I'll be, more knowledgeable to counteract that claim.
Yeah, so that question usually comes from the assumption that we are going to instantly turn vegan. And that's not going to happen. In my opinion, it's going to take time. Some people are going to do it sooner. Some people are going to do it later. Everyone is on this journey coming home to who we really are. So as that happens, and over time, the animals, we'll just stop producing them. So this is how I see the population of domestic animals declining over time. There will be some that we're going to rescue and keep in sanctuaries. And you will see that when you keep them in sanctuaries, it actually takes a lot of resources to keep them alive, right, to take care of them. Because the industry is pretty ruthless. So therefore, I think that this is why in my presentation I was assuming that maybe 1/10 of the population will be there in sanctuaries when we're done with this. So that's the this slide I showed.
Yeah.
So this slide, I was assuming it will be about 1/10 of what it is that what we have now, right? Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. So when will the info, the Israel conference, be available? We are working on it. We hope to have it within the next couple of weeks, I hope. So that's Isaac is in charge of that. Isaac, where are you? Are you here? So anyway, we'll get on it and we will let you know in the next couple of weeks. So can we do a presentation like Al Gore did? Well, certainly. I think all my slides, I'm putting them up on my website on climatehealers.org, and I also have notes on my slides so that anyone can take that and make a presentation themselves. You should be able to take this recording of this webinar and pass the link around so people can watch it. Because ultimately, we are telling a different story. It's a story of humanity getting out of this mess and actually seeing some goodness in the mess that we created at the same time. Yes, isn't it? I mean, it is almost like a blueprint, isn't it? It's amazing. I think nature is absolutely amazing. I'm a systems engineer, and I study systems. That's what I've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. And I can tell you that the most amazing system that I've ever studied is nature. There's nothing like that. It's almost sheer perfection. This is why I think that we are going to do this. This is inevitable that we are going to do this.
I had a chance too.
Yes, the strategy for the government actions of removing subsidies from animal agriculture. There is an organization in Canada called Nation Rising, and they are giving the blueprint for that. Nation Rising. It's available for anyone in any country to start the same kind of process there, where we basically have to go and demand from our elected leaders to take care of us, not to kill us. And basically, why are they teaching our kids? Why are they teaching our kids to eat bad food so that they get sick? Right? So clearly, when they do that, they're really not taking care of us. They're taking care of the corporations. So we have to demand this because they signed an oath. They actually took an oath saying that they're going to take care of us. So Nation Rising now is trying to create partnerships in other similar chapters in other countries. So please go to nationrising.ca and join the movement. So we are not just focused in the U.S. U.S. to me is the place where a lot of the explorers of our species have come. So U.S. is a place where we need to start this process off, but it has to happen in all nations. This is why I'm coming to Israel. I'm trying to create a similar link, similar kind of process in other countries as well. so that we can all be working on this together.
This is also got me around the bridge to get all the crap out of there. Oh, goodness, you should have seen what was behind it.
Okay. Yes, certainly. We would love to partner with Doctors Without Borders. Please send me an email. My email address is srao@climatehealers.org. I'll put it on the chat. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, it's nationrising.ca. Yes, India already being 25% vegetarian, there is an advantage there for the vegan message because it resonates with the culture of India. Ahimsa is foundation of a lot of the Indian religions. So for that reason, I think that India will go vegan pretty fast once they get the message, but it is telling the right story. So the story has to be disseminated in India as well. So a lot of people should be involved in getting that story out. Well, thank you all very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And until next time, thanks again to VeganNation for giving me this platform. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Ayel. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. Yes, we'll share the presentation. Yes, see you in Israel.